All right, shall we get started? Okay, well, we're gonna get started here. Thank you everyone for coming today to our LACEAAA and AAPA virtual Idea Talk series on diversity, inclusion, and inclusion. My name is Janice Cheng Yu. I am the immediate past president of the Los Angeles City Employees Asian American Association. And we put together this, this Idea Talk series today with our partner AAPA. Before I introduce them, I'm going to introduce a little bit some of our board members. We have here our president, Annie Chow, and our vice president, Alicia McGinnis, our other vice president, Irene Sekou, our treasurer, Susan Lim, our media coordinator, Lily Wu, and I'm not sure if I'm missing anyone else. And some of our other board members, we also have Yi Lu here. And now I'm going to introduce my moderating partner here today, Liana Ahmed from AAPA.
Howdy everyone, Liana Ahmed here. A little bit about AAPA, Asian American Professional Association. We have 3 main programs, the first of which is our mentorship program. Some of the members here have actually been part of that program, and it's been really rewarding. Mentorships are partnerships for life, really. We also have a board mentorship program too, and that leadership program helps some of us get asked to join boards, and it's a whole other world, and I think that program is very, very insightful for that reason. But also kind of unique for us is we have a Toastmasters chapter within AAPA. Toastmasters helps us here in these kinds of scenarios, and it gives us a bit more confidence to go out and speak in the broader world. A little bit about me, I am a mentor this year with AAPA, and I'm excited to be a part of the program from that angle of it. In my professional life, I work for Bank of America on the data analytics and insights technology side. I'm a nerd, a data nerd very specifically. I am excited to be here today to help moderate the discussion on something that is near and dear to my heart, diversity and inclusion with the LACEAAA Student Scholarship Program. Now I'm going to turn it over to Alicia. Actually, before we turn it over to Alicia, I think we're going to go over the program itself. Then I'll turn it over to Alicia. Thank you.
Sorry, Lena, I forgot to go over a couple logistical things.
Yeah, I was going to say there was something else.
Jump in over there.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it. Yeah.
So there are just for your reference, logistical stuff, you have mute and video controls at the bottom left corner of your screen if you need to do those. Everyone coming in is muted, and we ask that you stay muted unless you are a speaker at that time. The chat box is going to be open the entire time, so if you have any comments, if you have any questions, and if we're asking the audience to participate, please go ahead and type to everyone in the chat box. We'd love to hear from you. And then put yourself back on mute if you are speaking and when you're done. And you can change your screen view to gallery view or speaker view at the top right. If you hover over the box, there are little tabs that you could play around with to see all view, all of the participants or just the active speaker. And we will be taking down our share screen, and so you could see the speakers when we are doing the main session. And there are also reaction buttons. If you go over at the bottom of your screen, there are some reactions that you can put up. We invite you to participate by sharing a reaction if something resonates with you. And if you have any questions, you can either direct message one of the moderators, where we're listed here as LACEAAA in the front, or AAPA, or you can just type to everybody and someone will help you out. Thanks. Okay, go ahead, Leanna.
Thank you so much, Janice. Appreciate that. And I myself have been playing with those reaction buttons. They've added some new ones. So the overview for today's discussion, we're going to do some welcoming, some introductions, as you've heard already. We're going to go through some community agreements, and I'll go through that on the next slide. Then we're going to cover the student scholarships and the introductions there. And then we're going to have a wonderful speaker discussion and Q&A with our guest, Susanna. And then we'll have some closing remarks and some resources to take with you. I'd like to go to that next slide and talk about the community agreements. So this is a safe space for everyone. I wanted to make sure everyone understood that. It's a space where you should feel comfortable to share. While you're sharing, be kind to yourself and others. We're also learning. Language is evolving with us, and it's just something to, as you're typing or as you're responding to something, think about the words you're using and how you're using them. And you know, it's okay to ask a question. Everyone here has an open heart and an open mind. Be curious. Just be friendly. That's all I can say, you know. Roger's mug with all these reminders on how to be. So take some lessons from him as well when you're thinking about how you're talking today. And try on the lessons that you're learning and the things that we're talking about here. Take them with you throughout the discussion here today and then afterwards. But also, most importantly, what I wanted to make sure you knew is that if there's something that we're missing from this community agreement, feel free to type it into the chat, and anybody with an AAPA or a LACEAAA will make sure that we add it to our list of things to talk about in our community agreement and the things that we want to share with each other. And also think about the things that you want to gain from this overall experience. What is it that you think is the most impactful to you? We'd love to hear about it. We'd love to share that with everyone. All right. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Alicia.
Good morning, everybody. So LACEAAA has put out a scholarship award for this year. And basically, I'll go over what the question was that we asked students to write about for this year's scholarship. The topic basically was in regards to discrimination and their feelings toward it and how it has affected them and how they see themselves in being able to contribute to improving the situation. So our essay question for this year was, and I'll read it from what we put out to the students, is, with the ongoing spread of COVID-19 originating from China, Asian communities have been targeted for racial discriminatory actions. Results of this have created anti-Chinese and anti-Asian sentiments. So we asked them to write about the following. Number one, how have you or someone you know have been impacted by COVID-19 related discrimination, either personally or through media? The second question was, how has COVID-19 revealed discriminations that Asian Americans still face, and how does that go against the model minority myth? And the third question was, how can the Asian community respond to this current prejudice and work to prevent future similar occurrences? So these were the questions that were asked to the students. And basically we had criteria that we used in grading the students on their essays. Just basically, we looked at their essay itself, how they related to the answers to these three questions: discrimination, the model minority myth, and also we looked into their writing style. Other criteria we used was maybe a little more personal, like their personal growth, their professional growth, and also their volunteer work. Other more personal things we looked at were their awards that they received, also their extracurricular activities and their GPA. And that total score is what we use to grade each contestant for the essay. Are there any other questions on this part of it? No?
Right, we were going to go over the honorable mention and the third place at this time and go into the third place.
Okay. So we do want to thank everyone for that participated, all the students. We really appreciate the efforts you made. I'm sure it took time and a lot of work on your side. So we want to thank you very much for participating in our scholarship. So based on what I had mentioned, we came up with final scores. So I will go ahead and mention our honorable mention went to Darren Toe, and congratulations, Darren. This is the certificate. We will be going ahead and mailing the certificate along with anything else that goes to each participant. The third place winner, congratulations, goes to Yuri Nishi, and I apologize if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly, but congratulations. The certificate to Yuri, we present to you. As I mentioned, they will shortly be mailed out to you along with a nice gift. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for.
I have this moment to welcome Yuri to say a few words, actually, if you'd be interested, Yuri, about your essay or about what you hope to gain from this session today, or anything about the topic that we are here today to talk about.
Yeah. Thank you for awarding me this. So, okay. Thank you for awarding me this scholarship. Sorry, did you want me to read the essay?
If you want to, you can read from it or pick some of your most some parts from the speech that you, or the essay that you were most interested in or that you feel the strongest about.
Okay. Sorry, I wasn't expecting. In midst of the pandemic, my father experienced racism in his workplace due to COVID-19. And like most racism, it was subtle and hidden, but clearly existent. As one of the few Asians in the workplace, a coworker complained directly to his supervisor regarding sneezing. He was a person of color, and he chose to anonymously complain against the only Asian in the office. And he did this despite the fact that it's coughing that is a COVID-related symptom. And my dad is Asian, so he has, relying on the Asian desire not to make waves, the individual knew that my father would not escalate the situation, but in conversations with other employees, this employee asked, "When was the last time my father came back from China?" Answer is never. He has never been to China. In relation to this concept, I think that my dad exemplified the Japanese concept of gaman, or bear it. Many Asians follow this attitude where you choose not to react to microaggressions and instead you endure it. This produces a data feedback loop that encourages further racism because this these microaggressions are not addressed. And in American society, this Asian characteristic is often misinterpreted as compliance, and it allows people to be racist against you again and again, and it is not effective against toning down racism or prejudice. So in terms of the model minority myth, in the context of a hierarchy behind the veil of modern equality, it's sort of, sorry, okay, it shuts people down rather than lifts them up. And this is because the model minority redeems the surface level benefit of fitting in. Asians are like stereotyped as smart and hardworking, and supposedly they have climbed their way to the top. Because of this and these stereotypes, all of these examples of being victims of exploitation are dismissed. However, I think that this model minority position is condescending and hypocritical because we are placed in a socially acceptable role. We are an extra amongst the privileged or an accessory to the status quo, especially in media. We are enough to be included in the circle and simultaneously not enough to have a voice. And somehow the model minority is supposed to be grateful for this distinction in stature, as if confrontation in the name of self-respect is to be inferior. But therefore, our only choice is to stay quiet and exercise the principle of gaman, or we commit the crime of exercising concern. So, however, this model minority myth does not work for us. Like, so COVID-19's blame spread to the totality of Asia, and all Asians are now branded as a disease, and we are made to feel different and othered. And this separation extends to the interactions between Asians and other minorities. We're not exactly empowered to complain about our prejudice because it seems inconceivable that other groups of color would discriminate against Asians. And despite efforts to be the bigger person and show magnanimity in the face of implicit bias, in reality, this behavior only exacerbates the issues. People must realize that even if there are bigoted disparities sunken in place for generations on end, there is no excuse to perpetuate as a result of internalized racism. I think that we all hear the mantra of we are all human race, one race, the human race. And I think that's definitely true, but that's not true in society. And I think this is because that racism and prejudice, it's ingrained into our society from the first moment. And we can't reverse time. And I think that we cannot say that this is true until we start working to make it true. I think that in order to make advocacy for other groups a part of our mission, we need to stand up for other people. We need to stand up for other Asians because racism against other minorities, such as the Muslim ban or the Chinese ban, it all comes together, and it's all racism. And I think that
glad
yeah.
to have you talk today.
Sorry.
Don't be
Sorry.
silly. Thank you for being so brave. in sharing your story and your father's story. And it is, you know, a very, very sensitive and heavy topic at times today that we will be getting into. And we thank you again for sharing that and telling your truth, speaking your truth. And I hope you look at some of the comments we have there for you to support you. And thank you for being here with us today and being so caring about this issue for us, for you, for Asian Americans, and for the youth today to be so involved, you know, is so very inspiring. It makes me emotional too. So hopefully we will continue these important talks today. And we look forward to hearing more from some of you. I am going to pass it back to Leanna for a moment to take us into the next section.
Thank you so much. And my dog is chiming in the background, so apologies if you can hear him or not. I'm not sure. So, well, thank you so much, Yuri. You said some really difficult things, and I really applaud you at your young age to be able to talk about them so succinctly, especially in your essay. Really looking forward to what you do next, and especially in helping us propel these issues forward and resolving them, right? So let's move on to the next segment. We are going to have a discussion with Susanna Yi, and I would like to invite back Janice to be my co-moderator for this discussion around our topic. And Susanna, there's so many wonderful accolades about you, but I'll let Janice go ahead and go through all the wonderful things that you've done for us and continue to do with us. And Janice, you might be on mute, my love. Yep, I think you're on mute, Janice. Okay.
Still on mute, great.
That's okay, that's okay. We've all been there.
Hopefully this will keep working as I look at my notes here. I am very humbled to introduce our guest speaker here today. Susanna Yi is a founder of many movements, not least of which is hashtag Asians Belong, also Communities as One. I will go over her bio really quick here, but I do want everyone to hear her story for yourself. She has a very unique story to share with us, and I'm so glad that she is here today to help lead us through some of these discussions. So Susanna Yi is a yoga teacher and inspirational speaker. She shows us that community and compassion are pathways towards peace. After 17-year-old Keontae Gathorun took the life of her 89-year-old grandmother, Yik Oi Huang, Susanna sprang into action, being the change she wants to see in the world. Susanna was the recipient of the 2019 Raymond Schonholtz Visionary Peacemaker Award for her anti-violence advocacy and innovative approaches to bring diverse people together for understanding and reconciliation. She founded the social movement Asians Belong and the nonprofit Communities as One. She combines her 10+ years of social justice experience with her indigenous knowledge of healing pain and trauma to create multimodal community healing events. Susanna's ability to guide with vision and passion from a platform of peace and transformation has inspired thousands. Currently, Susanna is living life to the fullest in San Francisco and in nature. And without further ado, and I know she wants to lead us in some work to acknowledge the land and ourselves before we start. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce Susanna Yi.
Thanks, Janice. Thank you, LACEAAA, Leanna, Karen, Alicia, and all the organizers and the students who've participated in this essay contest. You're all my role models and such inspirations. Thank you. So yeah, before I dive into who I am, I'd like to acknowledge the land that we are currently on. If you don't know the indigenous people who were first here, I invite you to Google it, put your city, put indigenous people and the name of the tribe will pop up, and that's the territory that you're currently occupying. So I am in Ohlone territory in San Francisco. And I just want to say that it's important to acknowledge, because they were the first people who belong here on this land, and we are all settling here. And we acknowledge their great stewardship. If they did not preserve this place so beautifully, it would not still be here for us. And so we have a responsibility to take that forward in stewarding the land the best that we can. And also, in addition to land acknowledgement, I practice grounding with breath work. The breath is the most important thing in our lives. Without breath, we do not survive. And a lot of us are not skilled in taking deep breaths. And so it causes anxiety and stress, tension, and we are not embodying our full selves. And so I'd like to take a moment here, especially during these difficult times in our lives and with the heavy topic of this event, I like to invite everyone to close your eyes for just a second and letting your hands be free. They can be on your lap. And we'll take a deep breath in through the nose and exhale slowly. Yes. We'll do this 2 more times. Inhale deeply, feel your spine, honor and dignity in that beautiful spine, and relax the shoulders. Exhale. 1 more time. Inhale deeply, feeling the top of your head towards the heaven, and feeling your feet grounded to Mother Earth. You are strong, and you are right here, right now. You belong. As you exhale, make a sound. Let that out. And with that, coming back to the space, thank you for participating in that. And I hope it makes you feel a little bit better, because in this work of activism, it's important that we take care of ourselves. And so, let me tell you a little bit about who I am. My Chinese name is Yu Gaman. I was born and raised in San Francisco in the southeast corner called Visitation Valley. And as a kid, I would always say this mantra, peace in the southeast. I thought it was cool, it rhymed. And I said that because I heard so much violence in the neighborhood. It's a very diverse working class neighborhood, African American, Latino American, Asian American, Pacific Islanders, old, young, and we're all coexisting. However, on the morning of January 8th, 2019, just last year, my grandmother went out for a walk in the park, and she never came back. And unfortunately, a 17-year-old named Keontae Gathon took her life. And that day, there are 2 victims. One is now resting in peace, and the other one cannot find peace in his heart because he didn't receive the love that he needed. And also because the conditions of the world, the systems, created the circumstances that caused these actions. And so it's important to remember that it's not the human enemy, it's the system that's the enemy. And we look at how we can be the transformation. It's not what happens, it's not the circumstances, right? It's not fair. My grandmother is a vulnerable, innocent being, and it's not fair. However, it's what happens. How do we transform, alchemize a situation and use it to uplift each other? And so that's where the story begins with my work. Asians belong. We belong here. We've been excluded before, And now it's our time to claim our space. I say there's an acronym to be real. If you show up real and authentic, you belong here. You have a place because you are physically here, right? You take up physical space, and now it's time to use our voice. So REAL stands for reclaim our stories. Be proud of who you are. E for expression, to speak forth your truth, right? So we take up physical space, yes, but now let's take up airwaves, right? Being on Zoom here, showing up, even if you're comfortable, showing your face and build that connection. Don't be afraid to take up space. And so A is affirming, right? Taking action to affirm and be visible in that space. And then love is the last, is L. We reach out and we love each other, again, despite our circumstances, because we all bleed red. We are all one. And from these things, these actions after the incident, right? Asians Belong came out of COVID. Communities as One came out of the tragedy. And Communities as One, this nonprofit that holds my work now, is, I call it the lotus that rises out of the mud. If you know, dirty, muddy, environment is where the lotus blooms. It is where the lotus thrives. And so we are all lotus. Hurtful circumstances fall on all of us. And so how do we rise and use this as a light to guide and bring hope to others? And so that's where Communities as One, Asians Belong came from. And thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to converse with you all.
Thank you so much for sharing, Susanna. I really appreciate you being so candid about the journey. I know it hasn't been that long, so the pain is probably still very real, and I bet talking about it has been very, very helpful. So throughout this speaker discussion section, we also have some polling questions, and my sister in arms here, Janice, will help us with those polling questions. And I think, Janice, you've got one queued up for us. I'd like to go ahead and pass it to you to start us off.
Hi. Yes, so we're going to start with this one poll, but thank you. First, I want to say thank you, Susanna, for sharing your story. And I have so many questions because there's so much involved in here, and it's such a personal and tragic story. And I mean, hopefully, we'll find out with this poll here, but I wouldn't even know how to begin to respond. And so one of my questions for you as we go through this poll is to know, what were the thoughts going through your mind when this first happened? You talk so magnanimously about, where this hurt came from, or, the root of this violence, and where it doesn't start with just the incident, but much farther in the past. But is that where you started from? And what did you go through to get there? But we wanted to, let me share this poll really quick to see, who else has maybe experienced some of this before. So this is our first poll here. If you you can, I will launch it, and you can just select one, read all the answers, and you can select one, and then we'll give you a couple minutes to respond. So basically the question is, have you ever personally or had a close family member experience what you believe is racial violence or racial prejudice? You can select racial violence, racial prejudice, both, none, or you're not sure. And hopefully everyone can see the poll, and you can click one of those and submit. I don't see anyone submitting anything yet. And if you're not, if you don't feel comfortable saying, that's okay too.
I see a significant portion still like mulling the questions, or like
Okay,
actually a lot of folks are still answering.
take a minute.
Yeah, yeah. I'm really encouraged by the amount of participation I'm seeing here. Thank you guys for really taking heart. It just ratcheted up in less than a minute to like over 75% participation. So I'm excited to give y'all some extra, like another 30 seconds or so, and then we'll close it out. Okay, Janice, I'll go ahead and say that we can close it.
Okay, let's close this poll and see if we get anything. I'm not showing any results. I'm not exactly sure what happened here.
Yeah, for some reason, I don't know if I'm sharing the results or not, but basically the number one answer by a landslide that for some reason I can see at this point is 64% have said that racial prejudice, not both racial violence, but just racial prejudice. And we were tied for not sure and none. I'm so happy actually if you haven't experienced any. And then just a few people have experienced both violence and prejudice together, but a good number of the folks, and that was about an 80% out of our attendees who participated in this particular one, they've experienced racial prejudice. So a significant number of you understand exactly what we're talking about here today. So I'll stop sharing those results and close that down. I'd like to go ahead and get us started in talking, Susanna, about some of the, and Janice, you asked that question about, that moment after the tragedy happened and how you started to, you went from anger to action, like positive action so quickly, but I'm sure that, in your heart, it wasn't that fast, right? I mean, can you take us a little bit through that journey about how you went from one to the other?
Thank you. Yeah, it's kind of crazy because the year prior, so the timeline I think is important to share. 2018, I took a year off. I quit my job. I went on a spiritual journey because I needed to find out who am I, and I was also managing lots of chronic pain, and I still am today, but it's a lot better. This pain in my body really forced me to prioritize myself and listen to my intuition. So I wanted to trek the Himalayas in Nepal, and I've been putting this off for years. And so in 2018, finally bought a one-way ticket and just traveled Asia for a good 6 months, no strings attached. Then my sister was getting married, and I came back to the United States. And towards the end of the year 2018, I always like to end my year with a meditation practice. So I went on a 10-day silent meditation retreat. And I came out, this was January 4th or January 3rd, right? 5 days later, January 8th, grandmother had the incident with grandmother, right? So I was very grounded in peace. I found peace within. I did not feel the discomfort of pain. And as I learned about my pain, it's actually quite the teacher. So that's been my journey through yoga and meditation. That was my training. It's important to get to know oneself and be strong within. And thus, I felt the universe handed me this incident. And so when it happened that day, I lived only 4 blocks away. I ran to her house. I saw her in the sand pit. And I will spare the gory details, but you know, if you know Vincent Chin's story, his brains on the ground, well, I feel like that, you know, my grandmother is very similar. And so I was milling about the crime scene thinking, what can I do? I was so shocked, and I spoke to the police, and they actually did not allow me to take pictures and said I was obstructing. Don't listen to that, actually. You could take pictures. So I hung around, and I took out my phone, actually, and went on Facebook Live. Because there were no reporters present, I decided, okay, I have to be brave here and use my voice and share what happened. And I explained, similar to how I told you here, that I live in a diverse environment and that people, unfortunately, are fearful of each other. And I called for peace, I called for coexistence, and I called for understanding and tolerance. And it, you know, not everyone can do that, I understand, but I think anyone can take pictures and share. Anyone can just also be honest and express how you feel in the moment. So I was crying. I was so angry that I said that. And it's okay to share exactly how you feel right here, right now. And that's enough. That's the ripple effect. And so people saw it, and it just so happens that the district supervisor was getting inaugurated that day at City Hall, my district supervisor. And so the other community leaders from Visitation Valley, where I live, they were at City Hall watching my video, and she went and shared it with the other officials. And that's how it kind of blossomed. Yeah. But I do have to say that the training starts now. That's why I took you all through that breathing exercise, because if you're not aware of your internal state, it's very difficult, and it's easy to get to be taken over by your emotions. We acknowledge the emotions, like I did. I cried and I acknowledged I was upset, but then I also acknowledged what I wanted. So you know, first is share your story. Three steps, really. Share your story. You all did in your essays, beautiful. And now share your vision. Well, what do you want? So something happened. What do you want? Right? And when you share your vision, you invite other people to come join you in that vision. Because who doesn't want happiness, right? Who doesn't want to live in prosperity? And then you take action towards that vision. You create something, whether it's art, music. And so 4 days later, I created an event. 100-something people came. It was called Healing Through Solidarity and Song. And it's because of, again, all the years of healing my own pain that I experienced the power of community coming together, singing, even though it's because of a tragedy, but song uplifts, right? Maybe she sang the song. And it's a powerful way to shift out of whatever funk you are experiencing. And so to do it not in isolation, but to do it in community is so beautiful.
I like what you said about the not doing it in isolation. A lot of times, you know, you're already in pain, and then you're internalizing the pain. And we're still, especially in these COVID times, you're by yourself, you're not able to share it. So at least beyond that, well, we have these communication channels, at least, that we're able to maybe share some of that. I really like what you said about not being alone in that, and taking whatever it is you're feeling and sharing it, you know, and doing something creative with it. So with, you also touched upon something that, sharing via social media what you were going through in the moment. And, you know, I harken back to Philando Castile's story. So I happened to just log on to Facebook And I know a lot of people, and I saw this thing happening and I didn't know what it was that I was watching. And it ended up being that particular incident, you know, fast forward several years later. And so I'm from Houston, born and raised, and my mother's a professor at Texas Southern University. And George Floyd was a friend of a friend. He's tangentially in my circle of people. And when he passed in Minneapolis, it impacted a lot of people. And unlike the Philando Castile item where, you know, she live broadcasted it and it was visible to a lot of people, you know, for hours because she didn't turn it off, you know, bless her for doing that. Some of my friends were reliving the moment over and over again. And so I was curious what my panelists felt about that fine line that you share, because some of my friends actually, like, they were kicked off of social media for ranting against watching their friend die several times, you know. But at the same time, you know, they also understood that suddenly George is now a martyr. He's not just this guy that they knew on the courts and, you know, on the field. He's somebody else now, but it was painful. So how do you navigate between the pain of seeing your friend die repeatedly and then also understanding that people need to see that in order to understand the violence against POC?
Yeah, that's a very fine line. And when we talk about revolutionary acts, it begins with the internal and personal revolution. We need to take care of ourselves first and foremost with our breath and with the awareness of what content we allow ourselves to receive. And sometimes this is an addiction, you know, pain is an addiction. And, you know, in learning about my chronic pain, which has been over a decade long, it's like, how do I break the cycle, right? And so sometimes watching it over and over, yeah, it kind of gives us this rush, but it doesn't actually take us out into positive transformation.
Right.
I do agree that there's also, you know, respect for the person who the camera is on. I didn't post a lot of pictures of any pictures of my grandmother's face because it's not how I want her to be remembered. But then, yes, you do need to show, if there's no video, and unfortunately there was no video for my grandmother, people need to see. And also right now in our climate, a lot of pain is coming to the fore, to the front. And as a collective, we get to choose, again, how we want to focus. Are we going to focus in the mud, or are we going to use it to transform? So there's a personal responsibility there of awareness. And if you notice, wow, I've been on social media for hours. My neck hurts, my eyes be bugging. you gotta tell yourself to snap out of it, right? Return to the breath. That's where, again, it's like spiritual gym is important, right? You go to the gym, you build this muscle, but what about the muscle of your mind and your heart, right? And so this is why it's so important now, starting today even, you carve out some time to put on music, to get quiet in yourself, so that you know how to handle all this news, all this chaos, and find a path that is true for you. I hope that's helpful.
That is helpful. And there's some great questions that have come through on the chat. Andrew asked, you know, what has been the role of forgiveness in your journey since your grandmother's passing? what are your thoughts there? I mean, you've touched upon it a little bit, but thank you, Andrew, for that very specific question.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, it's a process. I think for me mentally, I understand that, right? And I hard. My dream is actually to have a conversation with Keontae. I think healing is two ways. The apology needs to be heard. My family needs to hear an apology, and until that happens, my family and we do our inner work of not letting anger poison us, not let hatred color our lives. And so that's, again, why I come out and speak, is because you're all supporting this change, and you're actually helping me heal. So I'm so grateful for this space. And that's, yeah.
Well, thank you for this, because it's not easy. It's not easy to talk about at all. These are, and I want to thank our LACEAAA and AAPA partners for putting together the space, and the scholarship topic and some of the essays that have come through are just brilliant. I can't wait to hear some of the other recipients as well. But thank you guys so much. And Janice, what are some of the things that you've been experiencing lately as well in your journey through the COVID year, as it has been become to be known?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of us have, it's the social media aspect of it is almost unavoidable. And even in the news today, you hear things, but I think as part of that, that's in some ways progress, where in the past, maybe it wouldn't even be news, some anti-Asian violence or bias, some graffiti scrawled on the wall, it wouldn't even make the news. And sometimes it doesn't make the news, but there is anyone can put up anything now, and that's a curse and a blessing, that someone can call this out. Susanna had the ability to go on Facebook Live and say, look, this is happening, or this happened, and this is important, and the world needs to know that these things are happening, and that Asians are being targeted, or people are being targeted, our elderly relatives are being targeted. I wanted to go into some of the student scholar essays to talk a little bit about what their experiences were, like Yuri's, who bravely shared earlier about her father experiencing this, and as I was reading it, I thought about I thought about my dad, who is also a city worker, and what he may have experienced, and just the thought of if anything ever happened like that, he probably wouldn't even share it with me. It's kind of this thing that a lot of Asian cultures have, where you don't share your pain. You kind of just hold it and bear it, And
giving us the term Yaman, the term that I didn't know we had.
Yeah. And that there's an actual term for it, right? And I'm sure in many cultures there's a term for it too, but it resonates, I'm sure, with all of us in some ways. You might not think of it, it might not come to you at first, but then we are all connected in these types of ways. And so with Yuri's story, experiencing that with your coworkers who you thought you're cordial with, like people you think maybe if they're not your friends, but you see them every day, that they are respectable people, but then you hear these kinds of things come out from their mouths that are totally antithetical to how you how you thought your relationship was, or how you thought this person would have treated you. And so if we, and what I thought about also was, this can happen among among races, among ethnicities, among your own ethnicities. As a Chinese person, there's stereotypes that I hang on to, about Chinese people. It's about myself and about the culture. And they say stereotypes are based in truth, but how do we go beyond that and not look at some of these things as like, oh, attributing it to, oh, this person did this to me, so that means everyone in this ethnicity or everyone that looks like this person is going to be like that. We sometimes have a tendency to do that. How do we move beyond that?
Agreed. My internet connection was acting up a little bit, so apologies if I froze or you guys froze for a second there.
Same.
Everything you said, I especially on our elder generation, maybe not necessarily letting us know what they're experiencing. And I like the fact that our generation is coming out and speaking the truth about it, and sharing even some of their stories that they were not comfortable sharing, because let's face it, they had it a lot harder than we did. They were establishing us, right? We have the benefit of their foothold. And if you've ever moved away or just been far enough away to where you don't have that foothold or that support, it's a little daunting to be the first. And we understand that had a lot to do with their silence, but now we can speak up for them, and we can help stop this from going forward. Now, I wanted to talk about some of the other, they had some other polls, and Janice, I'll leave that up to you if you want to do another poll. But then we wanted to talk through some of the model minority myth that that has, quite frankly, been shattered, and but not enough, I have to say. It's we're now the minority of disease, and if you look at my last name, you were talking about just co-worker incidences after 9/11. I certainly experienced some interesting comments targeted directly. People were very emboldened to say things to my face, even at the workplace. So and also, when you look like me, I've heard all kinds of remarks when you don't know my name and you assume something about my identity. So there are some interesting stories there to share for a later time. But I wanted to talk about that model minority myth and all the things that our air quote leader has said about us as Asians. So Susanna, any commentary there on what you saw and what you felt, maybe even in the aftermath of what you were dealing with your grandmother's passing?
I'm going to share this poll really.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, please do.
On Asian American history, because a lot of this, some that came out of our essays, student essays, where they didn't know. These are high school students, right? And they didn't know what the model minority myth was, and I don't remember learning that in high school either. I think I learned it in college, but I sought out taking Asian American Studies in college. And so we were interested in seeing, how many people out there even learn Asian American history in school. There were, less than a 10% of the population in the U.S., but we're an integral part of the U.S. history. And so is there enough teaching of Asian American history in our schools? And I just wanted to get a quick poll of how many people out there actually learn anything about Asian American history. So take a minute to respond to this poll, and then Susanna can talk a little bit about what Liana and I were talking about.
It's funny, you were talking about Asian American Studies. I didn't have that option at college. Let's just put it that way. There were other things, but nope. I didn't, not even an option. And I love my university, but it just wasn't there at the time. I think it's there now, but not when I was there.
And to tell you a little bit about how this is connected to LACEAAA too directly, LACEAAA has been around for almost 50 years now, and it started um, as a result of Mayor Tom Bradley, who you may be familiar with that name if you're younger, as the international airport, and the name of the international airport at LAX is the Tom Bradley Terminal. But Tom Bradley was the mayor of Los Angeles for a time, and he, I don't know the specific history, but I want to say he was the first African-American mayor of the city of Los Angeles. And in his term, he wanted to bring about more affirmative action in the city. The city was overwhelmingly white at this point, and and there was a lot of racial tension. And I mean, this comes and goes throughout our history too. But you know, as a baseline has always been there. But he really pushed for creation of racial equity in the city. And as a result of his actions, the Asian American Association was born, the Association of Black Personnel was born, the Chicano Association, the Association for Women and Disability, and those organizations were born out of his administration, and we were built into the bylaws or the laws of the city to exist as qualified minority organizations, and we were created to push for more hiring of Asian Americans, promotion of Asian Americans in leadership positions. We've moved a long way from there, but we still don't see a lot of leadership there. And so the fight is not over. And to really know that history and understand the history is something that we need to keep up in people's minds, and not just think that this is just history and isn't affecting us today. I'm going to close the poll. I'm still having trouble. Okay, I think Karen has
closed it for us.
it
Yeah,
up, but I can't see it, but Karen will let you know.
yeah. So a lot of folks did hear about the term outside of, you know, like Asian American history and the terms of, I mean, there's the term the bamboo ceiling, which I only heard about in the last 10 years. And if y'all don't know what that is kind of like the glass ceiling, but the bamboo ceiling is very specific to Asians. And one of my uncles, you know how we have family friends that we grew up with, we call them uncle and auntie, right? He felt the bamboo ceiling at a specific, you know, in NASA, and this is the Houston story, of course, but he felt that he could only go so far, and he went ahead and took retirement. And he's like, you know, that bamboo ceiling, and I had like, you know, what's that mean? And so he explained what that was, but he is of that same generation, that older generation, that just at some point in time they felt that the only way out for him at that point in time was like, either I stay in and struggle at this level or I retire.
Susan, do you have
anybody
anything
else's
to add
experience
in this, our discussion on this?
Yeah, the term model minority, I also learned later in life, and growing up in San Francisco, it's so diverse that, you know, I didn't really understand what racial oppression was until learning in my workplace. They had diversity training. But I think subconsciously, growing up, I still am a rebel, going against the conditions that you know, society places on women, places on people of color, places on just anyone that is outside of the quote unquote norm. But what I'm learning is that we can reframe a lot of this, right? What does it mean to be, I don't want to call it model minority anymore, but just to be model? Can we lead? Can we be the leaders in the fight, in the amplification of our own voices and other people's voices? Can we be the model joy and creativity, innovation, right? When we do not accept these labels, when we color outside of the box and be who you are unapologetically, right? Then that visibility decolonizes, it heals, and it says that we no longer take any label, model minority, even you know, the label of Asian American, even though it's a conglomerate political term, it's not actually outside of the, like outside the U.S. You're you know, you could be a Filipino, an Indian, Vietnamese, right? You're more than your skin color is what I'm trying to say. You're more than your culture and identity. You were born you, and it's all these labels that then start shaping who we are and what we identify with. And so really understanding, like when we return to this oneness, right, we look at, well, what are the values that we can all connect around, right? What is universal, right? We breathe, we eat, we poop, and we die, right? So I don't accept model minority. I don't even sometimes spend the energy to go against it, because what we focus on persists, right? Energy goes there and it just, you know, so reframe, pivot, let's talk about what we want to see in this world. Let's create and collaborate, right? Let's collaborate. And there's a reframe. It's called the people of the global majority. We are not minorities anymore. We are people of the global majority.
Thanks, Susanna.
And I would love to hear others if there are comments from others who would like to chime in.
My only comment on that, and I'll pass it to Janice, is that I like to tell people, I do have some Macauan ancestry in my father's side, so I do bring that up, and I say, like, look, I represent at least 2 billion people, if not more.
Yeah, we have a question here, but I also wanted to wrap it up because it does have to go. We will continue with some Q&A afterwards. So there's a lot of discussion to be had, but I did want to recognize our second place and first place awardees and open it up for them to ask any questions of Susanna, and with some of our other questions and comments here. So our second and first place winners, we will announce you after this who actually won, but Jesselyn and Ariana, I'm gonna ask you to unmute yourselves, and if to ask any questions or to say anything that you want to say to our speaker here, Susanna, before she has to take off.
Okay. Allow me to think of something. I do apologize.
That's okay. We also have another question here from Andrew. It says, given the well-justified and continued attention being placed on Black Lives Matters and systemic racism, primarily from a Black perspective, how can the AAPI community craft a unified and consistent message in the face of ongoing societal fatigue and division within our own community? It's a lot here, but it's in the chat.
Is this a good time to comment on that?
Yes, go ahead, Susanna.
So I'm going to a rally that starts at 1 p.m. It's an Asian American led rally against racism and hate crimes. And this is exactly the type of modeling that we want, is that we create ourselves the movement. And it's called They Can't Burn Us All, because an 89-year-old Chinese grandmother in New York was unfortunately lit on fire by 2 13-year-old kids. And there needs to be a lot of education around how to treat people, period. And the API community is going to show up to say, we don't tolerate this, right? And this is the space where we get to share what is going on for us. I think all of these things, I know all of these things are happening simultaneously. The pain is not just in one community, it's simultaneous. And so we have the bandwidth. Well, some have the bandwidth and some don't. And you don't need to show up to all of it because you will burn out. I have burnt out, and it's okay. I want to say it's okay to normalize resting and taking a break. And then other people can show up, and then you show up when you can again. And so, you know, Asians Belong is something that we've created to say that our life is also precious, and we get to speak, and we get to be seen and heard and respected. Like we need to teach other people how to treat us, and so that's done through being visible, standing up for ourselves. And again, in this climate, when folks are saying, well, what about us? What about Asians? Well, we don't ask for permission anymore to have other people give us attention. We go and we put ourselves out there to be seen, and we demand, and we, like I said, we affirm, we place ourselves out there in unity with other struggling communities, because this is not a fight against each other, right? We have to remember that this is a dismantling of a system that no longer serves humanity, right? There are no human enemies. It's a system. Yeah, I could go on and on, but I'll pause there.
Ariana or Jessalyn, do you have anything that you wanted to say to Sasana before we just go?
Oh, I do, actually. When we speak about being models, how is it that we be models within our own family? How can we approach this sort of issue to, you know, the older generations? It's a
Thanks,
little hard.
Ariana. Yeah. When, you know, the tragedy around my grandmother, my mom's mom, I started bringing her out to meetings and holding bilingual, you know, if you're not bilingual, I encourage you to find someone that can translate and create these spaces where dialogue starts to happen, right? Because there's a reason why there's anti-Blackness and anti-Asianness, because we're hurt. We're both hurt, right? And so we got to create spaces for dialogue. And when I hear that you're hurt and this is your pain and your history, I understand and I have empathy. When the other person hears of a similar thing, oh, wow, you've gone through this, I've gone through this too. Then there's we can see each other's humanity. And so when I talk to my parents, it's not a lecture. I mean, trust me, I tried lecturing and I got shot down, right? It's really meeting them where they're at. Like, oh, I hear your pain, I feel it. This is why you have these prejudices and biases, because you watch the news or you've encountered it yourself, right? And so speaking, actually coming from a place where you are listening and understanding before trying to be understood is the way to go. Listen first and meet them where they're at with open heart, and then they are more willing to listen to you when you come and say, well, you know, we need to be in solidarity, because they're not there yet. A lot of the older generation isn't there yet until they're heard. And so the rally, you know, and if you have the opportunity to create your own march, do it. Anyone can do it. Oh, sorry. What I wanted to say about the rally is that I kind of left you guys hanging. It's a space for the adults. I call them adults because of my parents. You know, they're always adults, and I'm the kid. The older generation can come out and share their energy, their frustration without needing to speak in English. They don't know. And that's the frustration, not knowing the language keeps them quiet as well. And so a rally is a great way for them to show their and frustration out. So yeah, these are ways we can support our older generation. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Jesselyn, did you have any questions for Susanna?
This might sound a bit unimportant, but how do you relate the issue of Asian American discrimination to other ethnicities?
Thank you, Jesselyn. There's no comparison of questions, and I also want to encourage no apologies needed for showing up, especially as women. You do not need to apologize. So Asian American discrimination is a question of how do we connect that with other discriminations? Finding the commonality between our pain, right? Even though each person's experience is different, but we're being othered. If you are not part of the dominant culture of whiteness, right, then you're a community, you know. So we need to expand our perspective, and there's something called the integral theory by Ken Wilber, and he's one of the greatest spiritual teachers, philosophers, and he's looking at, you know, how do we expand our perspective to be as inclusive as possible? And even, you know, when we talk about white supremacy, it's not against white people, right? Because they are part of the system too. We embrace that the human condition, unfortunately, has these tendencies of othering, right? Greed, delusion, hatred creates pain and suffering. And so when we can, you know, acknowledge our own discrimination, yes, Asian American discrimination is this way. And then in the same sentence, we say, look at this, the greater picture, bigger picture is that the causes and the conditions that create the circumstances for Asian American discrimination, for African American discrimination, Mexican American. So how do we, right? How do we find what is the common thread, which is what we breathe, we bleed red, and we, you know, listed some of the commonalities, and we feel pain. We've all lost someone. Could raise your hand if you've ever lost a grandparent, a parent, a friend, right? If you know of someone who's been hurt, right? So these are the places that but I'm not trying to diminish our pain. I'm trying to say we can connect pain, connecting with pain. And then what's even more important is not to focus on that, acknowledge that, move to that next level of vision, sharing our inspiration. What do we want, right? And then we pull our resources together to move towards the world we want to create. Yeah, does that make sense?
Thank you so much, Susanna. And thank you for our scholars for asking such poignant questions. Yeah, I mean, I think the goal is to, you know, a lot of people out there are hurting, and you know, how do we go about fixing that. And you know, it's getting everyone to this place where we're not hurting, you know, because of how we look, and how do we lift everyone so, you know, we can all say we are equally Americans, you know, especially in our country, but also around the world then, you know, because our world is increasingly diverse, you know, wherever you go, you know, Australia, England and stuff, it's a diverse world now. And to just be able to see people as people, right? And to not say, oh, these people are less, you know, you have that everywhere, and it's like a universal struggle, but to get there, right? So I just wanted to wrap it up, and thanks Susanna so much. We're going to continue discussing this, and Susanna, you feel free to stay as long as you can, though I know you need to go. But we just want to thank you so much for being with us here today. And hopefully this will spur additional discussions. We will do a follow-up survey so we can maybe continue this more. We encourage you to follow Susanna at our website, susanayi.com, asiansbelong.com. Her Instagram handle is @Susanna. Easy to remember. And I just want to open up to Susanna for any closing remarks that you have, any inspirational words you have for us.
Would love to offer the platform Asians Belong to publish your essays. I would love to give you all Asians Belong t-shirts. Would love for you to even be a volunteer with Asians Belong to support us with the social media posts, share your stories, and invite friends to share stories, because when we share our stories, we actually are sharing our American stories. We are part of the American fabric. We belong. And if we start weaving these stories into the fabric, it's undeniable. We cannot be erased, right? Then that's part of the healing. The discrimination that we receive is part of the healing. Is to express it and weave it into the tapestry, because it's never perfect, and it's never all positive and rosy, right? Pain and suffering exists, and beauty exists. So we're all going to weave that together on Asians Belong. And I just want to also say that we need to vote to get our voices heard. That is another way to show that we are here, we belong. We belong in the White House, we belong in the boardroom, we belong on big stages. So do everything you can to express yourself, whether it's online or in person. Thank you so much for having me here today. I am super inspired to see you all, and hope that we can continue these really important and juicy conversations.
Thank you so much, Susanna. I really appreciate your candor. And Asians belong. We belong. Absolutely.
Asians belong. Thank you, Leanna.
All right, Janice, I will pass it on to you, and I think you will be, or Alicia will be, introducing our next winners.
Yes, I'll hand it off to Alicia to congratulate and announce our second and first place awardees. And we can also remind us and to congratulate our scholars on how much they're actually going to be receiving in this scholarship. So Alicia, if you're ready, take it away.
Yes. Anyway, we have a second place, of course, and first place winner. So I will start with the second place winner, who is Jesselyn Gianca. Congratulations, Jesselyn. Give a picture of your award you'll be receiving via mail. Thank you for your efforts. And of course, it leaves our first place winner to go to Ariana Castro. Congratulations, Ariana. You are our first place winner. And just to let you know, for our winners of the scholarship, the first place winner will receive $500. Second place winner will receive $300. And the third place winner will receive $200. And thank you very much. Congratulations. Now I want to give the floor first to our second place winner, Jesselyn, if she'd like to say in a few minutes to either talk about your speech or talk about any personal experience or express anything you'd like to say to our group. We'll have to say, Jesselyn, is she here? Is she online?
Yeah, I'm right here.
I know. Go ahead and you have the floor.
Oh, dear Lord. Um, well, my thoughts on the essay topic prompt was about racism and the recent acts of racial violence and discrimination was that it wasn't that surprising that people have this engagement because well, it's not really the first time we've experienced it. It came from somewhere. An example of this would be the Japanese internment camps, because those happened out of a place of fear of not little information and just a lot of misinformation, and they just kicked these Japanese people out into the middle of nowhere for no good reason. And I can also feel sort of an anti-Asian sentiment at school. I can feel it during recent times because when me and my Asian friends go and get good grades, I mean good scores on tests or exams, things like that, some people would, how do I say it? When we say we get good scores and we compare them to our non-Asian classmates, they'll make comments like, oh, it's because you're Asian. Oh, it's because you work hard and you're smart. You're just that, like something like that. And I know they don't mean it for like, it's a joke. It's like, they don't mean it as a bad thing, but you can just sort of still feel that anti-Asian sentiment, even though they don't mean it. And yeah, and for most Asians, it's not surprising because most Asians don't really want to confront this type of tiny part of discrimination and stuff. But just because we didn't speak up about it or we didn't confront it, doesn't mean that we like it or that it should be allowed and it should not be stopped. It should be stopped because it's just wrong. These recent acts of violence and discrimination have been pretty violent. It went from just snide comments to just stabbing and fighting people out in public, which was a very fast turn. And thankfully, I live in a community full of Asian Americans, and the non-Asian populace that lives here hopefully understands us. And I definitely feel the fear of Asians elsewhere. I do understand their fear because when you're a minority, you're not spoken as much. You're not, I don't want to say popularized, not as well known as other cultures. So you're not as understood. And so I definitely feel that fear because when I definitely understand that fear, and I also understand the fear of non-Asians, of people who people fear the COVID-19 naturally. It's a foreign disease, it's new, and there was very little information about it. And us humans, we don't like knowing, we don't like the unknown, we don't like not being in control of stuff like information or this new disease. And so when they find a firm point in this whole chaos of things, they will stand on it. And that firm point that they made was that it did that the COVID-19 did populate in China. And because of that fact, they made assumptions and inferred, which any normal human should, but their assumption that Asians suddenly had like COVID-19 because we were just Asian is a very wrong assumption. Just because we were associated with where it first populated doesn't mean that we suddenly have it, that we're biologically like inherit this disease and nobody knew about it. People have had this racism, and while we all have dirty secrets that we want to keep inside, and I think it was just this anti-Asian sentiment was just suppressed. It wasn't really full blown until COVID-19, because COVID-19 just with that element of fear and not confusion. Okay, maybe a bit of confusion and just a lot of unknowns. It allowed people to show what they truly felt, their true colors. And so that's my thoughts on it. And thank you for the second place scholarship.
Thank you so much, Jesselyn, and thank you for sharing your words. And I think you make a great point that, you know, the start of anti-Asian violence and bias, you know, wasn't with COVID, and it's not, you know, necessarily because of COVID. It's you know, it's been simmering below, and a lot of it, and then what Susanna talked about was, you know, these things that haven't been resolved in society, this history of othering, of fearing of the unknown. And I'm interested in hearing any thoughts that you have on, you know, and I feel your compassion, you know, for people for Asians who don't live in an area where there is a large population of Asians. And want to hear anything that you have, any thoughts that you may have on, like, what could we do about that, or what do you think is something that we can do to combat some of this some of these things that we see?
I think well, as the poll showed earlier, there's not that much education about Asian Americans or other ethnicities, or at least they're not as popularized, like I like to say, as the American history. So I think it would be important to just sort of involve more history of other ethnicities into schools, and maybe just hosting events to show hold the Moon Festival stuff, and like just to show the culture and of Asian Americans, and just to better inform and educate the public. And we also, I think, politically wise, I think we can, if Asian Americans want to be represented more, want to if Asian Americans want to be represented more, I think we should vote for more people who understand our Asian American discrimination and other ethnicities discrimination in order to be more represented.
Thanks so much, Jesselyn. Alicia, do you want to, or we'll open it up now to our first place awardee, Ariana, to say a few words.
Oh, okay. Yes. Thank you, members and guests, for allowing me to have this opportunity and for joining us on this Zoom. As we all know, there have been a rise in a lot of hate crimes against people of Asian descent. And unfortunately, the victims have been as young as 2, as vulnerable as 89, and as even whole families in commonplace areas, like the groceries across the street, and even in front of homes. And our nation's leaders have reacted in a disgusting way, I'd like to say. They have called it the Chinese virus, the Kung flu, providing something like a seal of approval. And a part of the Asian community, we usually do a double take to that, because we were told we were this model minority, although not directly, but with a series of stereotypes and things like that. and victors of the American dream. Of course, that is myth. We have to recall the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, like the first ethnic ban on immigration that our nation has had. And Jesselyn has remarked on this, but the Japanese internment camps of the 40s, how whole communities were uprooted and forced into these distant, diseased, and crowded corners of our nation out of fear, baseless fear. And we also have to recall how today we are not immune to this virus, nor the ignorance of others. We also have to understand that this minority myth has downplayed the experiences of other minorities. For example, the African American community and their struggles. Some have speculated that it is a result of lacking hard work and stronger familial bonds. And that perception completely ignores 2 centuries of enslavement, of segregation, and the enduring police brutality, and in other communities, say the Latinx and the African American communities as well, they still suffer these inequalities in housing, education, employment, wealth, and political representation. And these things, this is systemic racism, clearly. They cannot be solved with stronger familial bonds and harder work. These things, I cannot really give you an answer on how to solve it, but I can propose one course of action. And Jesselyn has mentioned this too, but education, really. In my restorative justice circles of my school, and I've seen how really limited our knowledge is on these sort of topics, these social issues. Like I've entered a classroom and silence when we ask how to define stereotype. And so I propose that we do have these consistent, meaningful conversations on stereotypes, like their consequences, and to prevent them. And we have to integrate that within the curriculum, especially to younger audiences, because they are aware. Even like as a child, I see these tiny little things on the media. It is there, and we have to like sort of ease their way into understanding it before they form these baseless assumptions that really might harm in the long run. And also to ensure that no stone is left unturned, we have to ensure that staff and educators are also trained properly. And I know they are now, but we have to really widen this throughout our nation. And in the end, that really ensures that future generations can make well-informed decisions when it comes to social issues, and that everyone actually can enjoy the benefits of education equally and succeed into higher education and into their careers successfully. Yeah, these times are really uncertain, but I'm actually a little more hopeful, knowing that I mentioned this in my essay, that change is no longer a possibility, but a reality. We have these movements like BLM and activism and protests, and like you guys here before me, like willing to change. And I'm glad of that, and thank you.
Thanks so much, Ariana. Your speech is very, very inspiring, and it's so inspiring to see the younger generation, you know, being aware of these things, thinking about these things, taking them on. They're such heavy topics, such big topics, and you know, it's really easy. I mean, at least back in the day, maybe not so much before, to really just be in your bubble and say, you know, I'm a kid, I don't need to know about these things. But I know that for you and Jesselyn and the others, you're on the cusp of being, you know, 18 if not already, and you know, being able to vote, and hopefully you're getting that message, you know, in your schools, like voting, being participant in democracy is important, and wanting to make some change in your world. I do, I'll open it up to Liana to say some words, but I also want to open it up now for our Q&A. We have our session at least till noon, and I know I want to hear from, we've heard from a lot of our youth, and it's so inspiring, and you guys are leading the way. But we also are here for our members, our LACEAAA members, and a lot of us, our parents, and parents of kids these days. And, you know, the thinking doesn't always mesh the same. You know, it changes throughout the year. A lot of us, you know, as Irene mentioned, as we've talked in our discussions before, and with the history of LACEAAA, you know, there is a history of fighting for Asian American rights there, but there's also these periods of, you know, we've done well, you know, we've worked this way through, you know, through the struggles. This has always been around, but we've been successful doing it our way. You know, is that not good enough? You know, there's lots of thinking out there. There's lots of diverse thinking about there, and every like Sasana was saying, you know, everyone is welcome to speak their truth, and it is what you believe is what you believe, and don't apologize for it. You know, we are here to listen and to all perspectives, you know, to your own perspective, to your own experiences. And so I want to hear from some of our LACEAAA members on, you know, what their feelings are, you know, what they're seeing, and what they want to see, and how they're feeling about all of this going on. It can be very, very overwhelming. And yeah. So we can do some hand raising if you want to speak. If my moderators can help me sort through that. But I'll open up to Leanna first, and then we can take some hands.
Yeah, I'll say go for the hands. It'll be fast. It'll be a quick way to find out. I'm going to go into another mode so I can see everybody as well. There we go. There's a lot of great questions that came through, or just commentary on the chat. Feel free to go ahead and unmute. And there we go. Irene, go for it.
Yeah, I'm so proud of everyone. And also I'm really inspired all the speech from the scholar recipient. And I really glad, you know, we can keep up this association and, you know, connect with other association together so we can move forward, because this is about the time Asian Americans should speak out and also represent us, and we can promote some leader and to move forward. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Irene. And I know in the commentary you shared how when you were first starting out with LACEAAA, how you pioneered some things and you were maybe a little frustrated with some of the things that you didn't see happening. Do you feel that with the leadership that, or the young leaders that we've awarded today, I feel really good. I'm so hopeful. You put a bounce in my step. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I feel so happy to hear all of them, their inspiration speech, and also their passion. I think, you know, overall, you know, through different generations, you know, some of us, we keep moving on. So I believe, you know, somehow, somewhere, you know, the entire society can to be aware and more, bring in more respect to Asian American. And we need a younger generation to keep moving on. And also we have to move together. So we share experience and we can provide the support.
Thanks, Irene. I want to open up to this last poll here, just to see. It's a two-question poll, and you know, feel free to answer however you believe. But I'm just going to send that out there, and then I think I'm having trouble with these. But Karen, if you can help me put out the responses here. So this one is on anti-Asian AAPI bias and violence. The first question is: do you feel that anti-Asian bias or violence is less than in the past, about the same, greater in the past? And the second one is: how big of an issue do you feel anti-Asian bias and violence is? So take a few moments to send us your thoughts.
And while they're answering, so Janice, what are your thoughts just in with LACEAAA and the future? I'm so inspired by the leadership that you guys have awarded here. What are your thoughts here as far as like the next steps? I mean, what can we do? What can we do to help LACEAAA?
Yeah, I mean, so with our history of starting, and our mission is still an affirmative action organization, and some of the newer challenges here today are, getting our members involved in more than just getting to know each other in our social events, but to see more of this promotion. So we do a lot of work with exam prep for promotions, a lot of internal stuff, but I want to see us do more with bringing more people into the city as well, opening that up to the city career. I think I can speak for every LACEAAA member here that we are all very grateful for our city careers, and it has helped us raise our families. I'm a child of a city employee, and I feel like the world has opened up to me because of this job that my dad had, and to broadcast that out widely, and because it's not perfect either. The city of LA is huge, and running a city is not easy, and there's lots of things out there, and we're really struggling right now too. And our main purpose is to serve the citizens, and we're part of that, to make sure that people aren't left behind, not being able to pay the rent, not getting enough food, having food deserts, not being able to get supermarket in their neighborhood, or and also if you look at Los Angeles, it is actually quite segregated. The schools in Los Angeles, LAUSD, are even though LAUSD isn't under our jurisdiction, it's based on where you live, right? Mostly, it's some of the most segregated in the country, and you wouldn't think that of somewhere as diverse as Los Angeles, as California, but all of that is a result of years of policy, and how do we go about changing that, because it's important to change that, because we are seeing the inequities in some of these schools, but and on top of that, or another side to that, is the leadership in the city. We have 2 city council members who are really supportive of us, who are Asian American, and that is so important, feeling recognized, and also something that we've really started working on. And as a result of a lot of this racial tension, the mayor has brought forth this plan for equity in our departments. But it's interesting that we have these organizations, these affirmative action organizations, and we weren't even contacted about the mayor's plan, as if he didn't know that we existed. And so we need to make sure that the leadership in our city knows, we are here, we are part of the city, to use us as a resource. We are here to help, and we know we've been living this, so make sure that we're included.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, go ahead.
Finish the poll here.
Yeah. Oh yeah, look, it's done.
Did we get? I can't close it now. Did someone else close it?
I think I can stop it. So I will. Yeah, but I don't know if I can share the results. I think Karen, I think you might be typing out the results, and I can visually just talk to them. Several of you, actually, the majority, felt that it's the anti-Asian sentiment or bias it's greater than in the past. Slightly fewer think it's about the same. And here's the thing about that: if you thought it was pretty bad and it's still pretty bad, then you think it's about the same. So I feel like I think Jessalyn, you brought up the fact that we're actually seeing physical violence now as well, right? So the greater than the past is definitely there. And then the second question about how big of an issue do you feel anti-Asian bias violence is, the majority 54%, sorry, it is of significant concern and we need to do more to address it. Just if you think it's a huge concern that's in need of bold action and we need our own movement. But very few of the others got any responses. So yeah, I think this was a great.
It was a little bit of I want to say somewhat of a trick question, because it's, it's easy to be in this moment too. Think about when you say the past, you mean like near future or far in the past. Some people say really far in the past. There used to be essentially like lynchings of Asians as well. When they first, a lot of people first came for like the gold rush and stuff like that, and the Exclusion Act, and anti-miscegenation laws, but there's also this current feeling, and so it's a little bit relative, right? To think about, we have come a long way, but there's also this kind of rise more recently out in the open, and it's good to know that how people are feeling, that it is something that how most feel that it is something that we need to address more of, and that helps us too as an organization, as LACEAAA, to see, is there something that we can do? What can we do about it? This is how people are feeling. We want to know, and so that will inspire us to work more towards building this coalition among our organizations and reaching out to our leadership and saying, include us.
Yeah, definitely. You were talking about the diversity in LA, but how segregated it was. One of my favorite programs to watch on PBS was Lost LA, I believe is the name of it, and where the lost history of LA, and they talked about just some of the systemic racism it was purposefully done. They actually had produced the documents that shared and showed how certain communities were targeted, and there was an entire episode just about Asian Americans and the yellow facing in Hollywood, et cetera, that occurred. So I encourage you guys to look that program up online if you can, just to fuel the fire that's already here as far as your passion goes. But it really, really inspired me to look at the city that will become my home in a couple of months, with a different shine to it. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and I'm happy to be part of helping that.
Yeah, there's also a recent, I think, for Asian Pacific American History Month, there was a documentary or a series that PBS did, and it was pretty inspiring to see like all of these works produced to document the Asian American condition, and a lot of these things that, even though I feel like I'm fairly well versed in this, there's so much out there. It's so much rich. There's so many stories, and I'm so glad to see that they are finally being put out there. And you talk about seeking stuff out. As I was doing some research, I saw an ad for the Chinese American Association in San Francisco. They're doing this 51st celebration of justice. Things are online these days, and I think the silver lining to this is that you can participate from anywhere now, in a lot of these things. And so the LA Asian Pacific Film Festival is going on right now. It's through the end of October. Check out films made by Asian Americans, made for Asian Americans. And part of that inclusion is to see yourself out there, not necessarily as a leader, as leaders, but in all walks of life, right? To be represented in media, not just as a mono minority nerd, who's studying and who has classes or something, but in different types of representations, because that is who we are. We come in all shapes, sizes, and thoughts, and so to see ourselves out there, and the possibilities that we can be is so important. We have so many people still here hanging on, and I'd love to hear from you. So please, if you have anything to say, please raise your hand or ask to be unmuted. Type in the chat box. We have a few more minutes here. Not seeing anything. A lot of people are content to just listen in today, and I thank you so much for that. So we are gonna wrap up then. We'll send out some a follow-up survey to our attendees. I want to thank everyone for being here today. Thank Sasana again, even though she's not on the call anymore. She's out there, you know, being what she is, you know, and not being apologetic about it. Being an ally out there, and also supporting Asian Americans in the process. You know, thank you everyone for coming to be part of this conversation, even if you're just listening, because, you know, as we learned, the part of the biggest thing is to listen, right? You know, the start of it is listening, you know, hearing our stories. And to our board members, for helping us set this up today, and being open to this. You know, a lot of the stuff we had been doing more in the recent past was social, like on the surface, and, you know, digging deeper is so important. And I'm thankful for our board's support on this, and for our members to feel like this is important. You know, it validates what we're doing, and we hope to hear more from you on what you want to hear from us next. And of course, our scholarship winners. Thank you so much. You know, you really inspired this. This is all because of you. You know, your stories here. We found this is the way to celebrate you. Hopefully, and you found it helpful and inspiring to yourselves to do more of what. I'm so sorry. um, to do more of what you're doing, and to be involved and vote if you can. And to AAPA, thank you for bringing this to us. We are so thankful for your partnership, and we look forward to more. Leanna, any last words?
Oh, no, you said it all. Thank you so much, Janice and LACEAAA, for the opportunity. And congrats to our winners. You are the best of us. And we look forward to seeing what else you guys can do. And thank you. That's all. Go forth and change the world, folks.
Yes, thank you. Okay, have a great weekend, everybody.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye.
Have a great one.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.